Yet fully grasping one of the most horrible, I could say horrible single incidents. I'm not talking on a general level where there's a mass murder, but the magnitude of the murder of one of the great Tzaddikim of the generation, Gaon Tzaddik, Rabbi Elazar Abuhatzeira ZTL Kollel. That some people have already mentioned that from the time of the killing of the prophet Zechariah, there has never been such a duplicate of such an action of a tzaddik sitting in his room and somebody coming. It's so puzzling. It's so puzzling, and when it happened, I got so many phone calls. Just Rebbe, what happened? What's going on? I felt it was very important that we come together and we are maspid properly the tzaddik, and we discuss what we can understand, what we could take from this, because otherwise it could have very dangerous effects on us, that we have the passing of a tzaddik and we don't comprehend properly the lessons that are able to be learned from this. So I first want to discuss, obviously, what it has to do during our times of the Ben HaMitzarim. We are mourning the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, and what the Bet HaMikdash is for us. I want to discuss that and give a perspective, a shocking perspective. I'm not going to say a nice, as they call it, a nice hidush. I'm going to relay certain pieces of information that I think is crucial for us to understand what times we are living in, what challenges we are facing, and maybe this will give us a little bit of insight on the magnitude of what happened. It says in the Sefer Daniel. Daniel is a book that's written in Aramaic, very difficult to understand, very difficult to comprehend. A lot of it is prophecies. And Daniel writes about 4 stages in the Jewish people in their exile, their trials, and they're really going to go through Arba Galuyot, 4 different exiles. The first is going to be an exile of an aryeh, of a lion. The next is going to be of a dog, a bear. The next is going to be a namer, a leopard. And this is referring to the different galuyot of Bavel and Parasu Madai, which was Bavel. Obviously, we were exiled from the Bet HaMikdash. Parasu Madai, which was Purim, and Yavan, which is the Greeks. And the fourth is very interesting. Daniel says like this. He says that the fourth one is going to be an animal that is not going to resemble all the other ones. And he says it's going to have a distinct quality. Vehi mishania. It's different from all the other exiles. This is referring to the exile of Edom. Edom. We are in the exile of Edom, and we have been in it for a while. It's unbelievable because the Midrash was written 2,000 years ago, writes Edom is going to last a very, very long time. Edom is going to last a very long time. It's hinted already in the first pasuk in Bereshit that Edom is going to be never ending. So I want to try to understand, why is it that Edom is really so powerful, and how does that power manifest itself in the present times that we are at now? I'm going to say things that are a little bit revealing, but these are the words of Rav Yisrael Elia Weintraub, Zecher Tzaddik Ubracha. He was a big Mikubal who was niftar last year, and it's based on the Torah, on the Gaon from Vilna, on the Gaon. So whenever I say the Gaon, I'm referring to the Gaon from Vilna. He says the following: that when there was where did bad stem from? Where was the source of bad in the world? The source of bad in the world was when the snake came and enticed Hava. That's where the Yetzer Hara was. It says in the Midrash, in Pirkei de Rabbi Elazar, that on the snake, riding on the snake, was the Satan himself. So you had the Satan combined with the snake. That was two sources of bad. What are these two sources of bad? Why you have one source of bad is not enough. Why do you have to have two sources of bad? So the first, as we mentioned, is from where the source of bad was, which was the snake with the Yetzer Hara riding on its back. So what are these two powers? So we look a little bit further in the parasha. The Gaon says an unbelievable thing. He says that when Esav wanted to actually become a more powerful force in the world, he went to go marry the daughters of Yishmael. He went to go marry the daughters of Yishmael. You marry the daughters of Yishmael? The Gaon of Vilna says that Esav understood that the great power that he's going to have, the most unbelievable source of power of evil in the world, is when he's going to be able to have Esav is going to be able to connect with Yishmael. That's what the Gaon of Vilna says. An unbelievable thing. He says that this is also, the Gaon of Vilna says, this is the power of Esav and Yishmael. This also manifested itself in the two daughters of Lot. They were the source of all of Yetzer Hara in the world. So these are all very interesting words, but what does that have to do with us? So the Gaon continues, and he explains the whole Sefer Mishle, the book of Mishle. He explains based on the following. There are two types of Yetzer Hara. There are two types of negative forces in the world. There's the Yetzer Hara, and every bad in the world comes from these two sources. There's the Yetzer Hara of anger, of Ka'as, which leads to murder, which leads to arrogance, which leads to vicious and violent actions. That comes from Ka'as. He says that's Esav. That's Esav. And then you have the Yetzer Hara of Ta'ava, of lust. But it also, he calls it Tzchok, which is lightheadedness. It's making anything that's important seem not important. Making anything of value valueless. Making anything that has worth to it worthless. That's the power of Tzchok in the world, of light ta'ava. These were the two powers there was the snake, which represented slick, trying to trick you. The snake knew very well how to trick you. That's the power also of ta'ava. And then you have the power of ka'as, which was the Yetzer Hara on top. The power of ka'as was Esav. Remember, Esav was a violent person. He was a killer. And then you have Yishmael, which is more the slick. This is the Gaon Mivilna. I'm not saying anything of my own. This is the Gaon Mivilna who says that these are the two powers of evil in the world. Which one is worse? Which one is worse? The Gaon tells us that Shlomo HaMelech gives us insight to that when he says in Kohelet, Tov Ka'as Mishok. Anger is better than laughter. It's a puzzling pasuk. But he says that's the depth of the pasuk of Shlomo HaMelech. That it's more dangerous to have tzchok than to have ka'as. When you have ka'as, when you have anger, you know what you're dealing with. Tzchok could sway you. Tzchok could sway you. And says the Gaon Mivilna, the most dangerous thing is when you're going to have a combination of both. When you're going to have tzchok and ka'as together, that could bring unprecedented results and dangers. With that, the Gaon Mivilna says the following. We've had trials and tribulations throughout our history. At the beginning, when the Churban Beit HaMikdash happened, that was death of our spiritual body. We had a body, which was the Beit HaMikdash, and the soul, which was the Shekhinah. And when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the body was destroyed, and we still had the soul. The soul went up, and the body was destroyed, and basically, over time, there happened to be decay. But all of the gzerot, all of the different challenges that we had, pogroms and inquisitions, that all came from Esav. Then we entered the stage of the Galut of Edom. About 500 years after the Hurban Bet HaMikdash, Yishmael started coming into power. Yishmael started coming into power. Once Yishmael started coming into power, then things got much worse. Historically said, things got much worse. Because then you had the power of Edom and Yishmael together. And up until, I would say, the 1800s, this is already Weintraub mentions, the power of Edom, of Ka'as, of anger, was more dominant. But in the past, I would say, he says, 200, 300 years, the power of Schok, the power of rights to everyone and more spiritual freedom became much more accepted. And then he says it's much more dangerous power. He suggests that the challenges and the dangers that we have of the combination of Edom and Yishmael together is something that is uncontrollable. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult. He says that's why, even though we had different pogroms, when it was the time of Esav, the Jews were always able to pick themselves up afterwards. But after the Holocaust, which was already, he contends, this Rav Weintraub, that there was a connection between Esav and Yishmael, a spiritual connection. I'm not saying that they joined themselves in war. We're going to speak about that in a moment. But there was a connection between Edom and Yishmael. It was such a bad blow that basically the generation changed. That there had to be a new start of Torah in America. Europe was already finished with Eastern Europe. There's the Jewry over there is basically non-existent, very, very little. And it was a drastic change, because that was the power of the blow of Esav and Yishmael together. And the Zohar Kadosh tells us that at the end of time, Ikvata de Meshicha, the most challenging war, the Gog uMagog, is going to be when Edom, Esav, and Yishmael, when the West and Yishmael come together and join forces. Now, I don't know when we say West, we mean the Edom, we'll call it the Christian culture, together with the Muslim, come together against the Jews. That's the most dangerous time. Because then you have the connection of both elements of ta'ava together, ka'as and schok. You have ka'as and ta'ava. You have lust and anger, which is the source of all evil in the world, and that's what we have to challenge. That's what we have to. That's the challenges that we are facing. You know, what happened on Thursday night? What happened on Thursday night was very, very evident historically, on a historic level, on a personal level, and also if we look inside the sources, it wasn't a random action that happened. That Baba Elazar was killed in the way he was killed and how he was killed was not, obviously we know nothing random happens in the world, but this was a very important piece in our history. I want to tell you a story that happened 90 years ago in the city of Tefilalet with Baba Elazar's great uncle, the brother of Baba Saleh, Rabbi Abuhatzeira. There was a Jew who lived in Tefilalet. He was elder and he was blind already. His name was Rabbi Moshe Dahan. And Rabbi Moshe Dahan, he became blind and started saying things to the point that people were afraid to go visit him, because every time they would go to him, he would reveal another avira and another deficiency that person had. And people didn't want to go there and have their avirot revealed. So Rabbi David told Baba Saleh, Rabbi David Abuhatzeira, which was the mentor of Baba Saleh, he was his older brother, he told Baba Saleh, go visit Rabbi Moshe Dahan. Baba Saleh said, I'm scared, he's going to reveal my avirot. He says, in the schut of Bikur Cholim, of visiting the sick, nothing will happen to you. He went to Rabbi Moshe Dahan. Moshe Dahan looked at him and he says, I can't say anything about the Abuhatzeira brothers. They are holy from the womb. And he says, Rabbi Israel and his brother are worthy of atoning for the whole generation. That's what he said. And Baba Elazar was very scared. He said, what, they're going to atone for the whole generation? He went back to Rabbi David. Rabbi David said, don't worry, you're going to live long. I might have to go soon. So Rabbi David said. And sure enough, there was a general, an Arab general in control of their city called Mulay Muhammad, and I think, and he basically had a very hard time with the Jewish people. He had, we'll call it, he really wanted to control them strong, and he's suspicious that they were joining with the French. So things spiraled out of control until he made a gzira that they're going to kill all the Jews in Tafilalet, 90 years ago. Tav Resh Peh. That they were going to kill all the Jews in Tafilalet. A horrible gzira. And all the Jews didn't know what to do. And Rabbi David was also very worried. He says, it's gzira min hashamayim. He doesn't know what to do. Until one day, Rabbi David told his congregants, they're going to take me. Hashem accepted my tefillah that I am the kapara for the door. I am the atonement for the generation. That's what he wrote. That's what he said. That's what he told them. And Vayehi Hayom, it was the day. It was a Friday night. Usually he would switch from his black jalabia until a white one for Lichvot Shabbat Kodesh. This Shabbat he didn't change, and everybody was very, very shocked. He walked into the Bet Midrash with on Friday night dressed in black. They were very, very scared. And they thought it was their end. They thought that, and the next morning, he didn't let anybody ask any questions. He rushed into his office, and he didn't want to speak to anyone. He came back out, and sure enough, there was the generals waiting to take him. They said, we have decided and we have discussed this with our advisory council, and they said that if we take the leader and we kill the leader, that's going to be enough. And they took Rabbi David, and not only did they kill him, they put him in a cannon. And they shot the cannon, and that's how they killed Rabbi David Abuhatzeira. And Rabbi David was very happy. He says, I am able to be an atonement because there was supposed to be a great gizera. There was supposed to be a great gizera by the Jewish people, and I was able to atone for it. This was Rabbi David. You know, the Gedolim who spoke by the Levaya and his family said that Baba Elazar knew that he was going to be an atonement. He was for us, for a terrible gzira that could have happened. I mentioned on Shabbat that Rav Yoshiyahu Pinto, Baba Elazar's nephew, said that less than a year ago, Baba Elazar called him and told him, I want you to come to visit me in Beersheba. Rav Yoshiyahu was in Manhattan. He took a plane. He didn't ask any questions. He got there. Baba Elazar told him, I want to give you this watch. It's Baba Meir's watch, my father's watch. And I want to give it to you because I'm not going to be around for too much longer. Who knows if I'll be around this year? That's what he said. Rabbi Yoshiyahu said, you have a long life. How could you talk this way? He didn't answer. In the parasha, there's also hints to it in the parasha. I didn't want to mention this on Shabbat. I saw it. I spoke to Rabbi Yasayag, and he said he saw something also in the parasha. How it says that in the parasha that he died in, the parashat Mas'eh, it talks about murder. Mot yamut harotzeach v'im be'even yad asher yamut ba hikau vayamot. And if you take the words ve'im be'even yad asher yamut, you will have the Rashi Tevot, the beginnings of Vav, of Or Vav. In other words, the night, Thursday night, Elazar ben Meir Yamut, Asher Dahan Yihye Harotzeach. It's all written over there. It's all written by Rashi Tevot. I don't know how Rabbi Yasayek thought of it also. It was unbelievable. I saw it in the name of a great Admur. It's clear. There are many simanim. I mean, even the way he was killed, it just makes no sense that they found a letter that the murderer wrote. They found a letter that the murderer wrote a couple days before, and they gave it to an expert who's able to tell by the writings, does a person have a syndrome of some sort that is indicative that he could do a violent action? They couldn't find anything. They couldn't find anything up till today. From what they say, the defense of this person who did this terrible act didn't know what he was doing. Didn't know what he was doing, bringing a knife inside the room, and then the way it all happened. I mean, the way that somebody who did there doesn't seem to be any clear motive. He says he didn't want to kill him. I don't understand what that. Obviously, that's a defense trick. But the fact that you have it's nothing planned out. It's nothing. It's planned out by one person, but it wasn't. There was no motives behind. It wasn't somebody who clearly was dangerous beforehand. It happened in such a weird way, and Baba Elazar already knew what was happening. And there's a history of the Abuhatzeira family, and I think there are simanim. How could we not see the simanim that there could have been a very great gezerah that we are finding ourselves in the generation of Edom against Ishmael, and they're fighting, and they're coming, and even though they're fighting, they're also working on getting together. That's a very scary thing. It's a very scary thing. We're entering in a tkufa. We're entering in a stage that we don't know ma yulid yom. We don't know what the day brings, and we don't know what Baba Elazar did for us. We have no idea what he did for us, what his kapara was. And I'll tell you, I didn't know Baba Elazar personally. I didn't, even though I lived in Eretz Yisrael many years. I didn't used to go to Beersheba to visit him. But usually the way that I kind of judge who the Gdolim are, who I'm not a one to judge, but the way I understand how Kollel Yisrael picks their Gdolim is the way others speak about them. His family, Baba Elazar's family, Rabbi David, spoke of Baba Elazar in such revered terms, and the Rabbi David Abuhatzeira from Nahariya is no small tzaddik himself. He is known to be a very, very pious person. Rabbi Lebhar Hesped. They all are of tremendous caliber themselves. Agana Rav Ovadia Yosef Shlita, the way he spoke about Rabbi Elazar, all of the Rabbanim who came to visit by the Shiva this week, all they said was that his Kedusha was unprecedented in the generation. And this is what I want to concentrate on tonight, what we could learn from Baba Elazar's Kedusha. Because, truth be told, it's a lot of what he was able to work on is very far, by me for sure, and it's something that's hard to understand. But when a tzaddik of this caliber left this world, especially if it's a kapara for the generation, it's up to us to try to learn lessons from the tremendous vacuum of Kedushat Hashem that was in the world that left. So let's try to understand, let's try to have one lesson of who Rabbi Elazar was, who Rabbi Elazar was, and what we could learn from it. Rabbi David Abuhatzeira said by the Levaya that his brother represented the pasuk Elokim Ayin Lo Ra'ata Zulatecha. Elohim Ayin Lo Ra'ata Zulatecha. That the Rashi Tevot are Aleph Ayin Lamed Resh Zayin Elazar. That's what his brother represented. That he was way above what we could fathom. In what? He was a giant in prishut. Prishut means abstinence. He was a giant in abstinence. Already Baba Saleh was the one who used to name his grandchildren. And Baba Saleh had a dream before Baba Elazar was born. He was born after 7 children and 7 miscarriages, and Baba Elazar was born after that. And Baba Saleh said that he had, the night before, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came to him in a dream and said, "Why is nobody named after my son Elazar?" That's how Baba Elazar got his name. And it's known that Baba Saleh had tremendous affection, especially for this grandson, Baba Elazar, that he knew was going to follow in his footsteps. And he did. He did a lot of the different hanhagot, a lot of different practices that Baba Saleh did. He spoke very little. He had ta'anit dibur for 7 years straight. He had ta'anit dibur. You know what that means? That means he didn't. No vain talk left his mouth besides divrei Torah for 7 years straight. I don't know if I could do it for 7 hours. For 7 years straight. He had ta'anit hafsaka, which Baba Saleh used to do from Motzei Shabbat to Friday, not eating a thing for many times until there were certain reasons why he didn't continue. His gabbai said that there was many stories that Baba Elazar didn't let him reveal, and now already some of them are coming out. One of them, just to mention, is that he had to go through an operation recently. He refused to take anesthesia. He put his mind somewhere else, and while they did the operation, he didn't flinch. He had such power over his mind that he didn't flinch. But what he was the most known for was his shmirat ha'inayim. He was very careful not to see what he wasn't supposed to see. And the Gedolim, the giants of the tzaddikim of the generation mentioned that he was a gadol hador. He was the giant in our generation in shmirat ha'inayim. Now all of these things, I'm sure we're looking, we're saying, how could we relate to that? You know, we could all relate to that on our personal level, and I think this is the lesson that we have to try to emulate from Baba Elazar. Yes, on his level, which was the master level, which was the level of a tzaddik that kept the generation going and atoned for the generation, yes, it's something that maybe is beyond our reach right now. But we could all work on making our homes a makom shekhinah. We are in the time of the Churban Bet HaMikdash. The Bet HaMikdash was our center where the Shekhinah was able to be, because it was a pure place in Am Yisrael. It was pure Ruchaniyut. Our homes have to be pure, without outside influences. There are so many negative influences contrary to values that we try to teach our children that are out there. And it's not enough that they're out there, but they sometimes penetrate into the house. Whether it's magazines that shouldn't be there, or there's certain electric devices that are basically sitting in our living rooms that could, as Rav Victor Miller would say, it's like you're putting I'm sorry to express it in this way, a sewage pipe in your own living room that's just spewing out all of different all of different garbage right into your living room. Would anybody put a sewage pipe in their living room? And you know what? It's not only. I'm not speaking only on a religious level. The studies have shown by universities and by non-Jewish places, but the negative effects it has on children. The negative effects that it has on children, and it's on each one of our level to try to diminish a little bit of that negative influences, whether it's curtailing certain ways, whatever we could curtail, whether it's getting rid of certain influences that we have. Our house has to be a haven of Kiddusha. Our houses have to be places where it is free from negative influences from the outside. Because that's the only way we're going to have tzedakah with our children. Because as much as we could try to educate our children, but they're going to keep on being exposed. The street is stronger. Believe it or not, the street is very, very strong. And we can't fight effectively against the street unless we protect our home. Baba Elazar was able to protect his home, his own self, in a very, very powerful and strong way, which he was zocheh to kiddusha that we cannot fathom. But what we could fathom is the lesson of making ourselves a wall about anything negative around us, making walls of things that could be mazikas, things that could harm us, things that are not conducive to kiddusha. We have to work on those things, because this is what Baba Elazar taught us. I'm going to end with the words of Rabbi Elazar Abuhatzeira ZTL Kollel. In this week's parasha, Ele Adevarim. And the pasuk continues, Bamidbar, Ba'arava, Mul Suf. These are words of rebuke that were spoken in the Midbar, in the Arava, in front of Yam Suf. Says Rabbi Elazar Abuhatzeira. These are words of Tochacha that are spoken. Bamidbar, in other words, Bamidaber, when people say things they shouldn't say. Ba'arava, when things are smooth. In other words, you get enticed by smooth things, by smooth desires and lusts that you shouldn't have gone to. Mulsuf, the way to conquer that is only by looking to your end and trying to and knowing that eventually all of this doesn't have doesn't have purpose for right now. Look at the end result. Look what you really want. Don't look right now at the moment. Look at a sign of maturity is not thinking only about the moment, but looking at consequences of your actions and thinking what I really want for my family. If we learned this from Baba Elazar, from the tremendous tragedy and the understanding that we are in a time that's scary. We don't know what the gzirot could be, and we hope that Baba Elazar was able to take a chunk of those gzirot off. But the way that we will be able to emulate that is the same way Baba Elazar, by protecting ourselves and during the time when the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, making our own little Bet HaMikdash. This is the way Be'ezrat Hashem that we should have a proper Ilu Neshama Lichvod the Tzaddik of Baba Elazar, Rabbi Elazar Abuhatzeira. Men Ken Yiratzon. I'm going to make a shkava. והחוכמה מאין תמצא, איזה מקום בינה שאדם מצא חוכמה ואדם יפיק תבונה, מה רב שלך שצוות על ירך ועל זה אנחנו עושים בה נגד בני אדם, מה יקרה חסדך אלוהים בני אדם, ואת זה תנפך יחוסיון ארגון בדשם תרם נחל דרך תשכם לנוכל טוב שמישים טובים עבדים עבדות סוף דבר הכל נשמע, יתרים ילבת ותלב שמור, וזה כל אדם, אלף חנן ברבות, אנו משכב אדם, מנוחה, נכונה בישיבה עליונה, מנת קידושים ותורים, כל רקיעה, בינו מזירים, אלוס עצמית, קרבת השמים, והרחקת פשע והקרבת ישע, וחמלה וחנינה, ושוכן לעונה, חולקת טבע, חולם הבא, שם תהיה מנעד מהחיצת וישבה נרשם מטוב המרוחה, אלעזר בן מאיר רוח אדוני תניחנו בגן עדן להתפטר מן על מעדן קריאות אלוהם הרי שמאיה והרע מלך מלכי המלכים רחמיו ירחם עליו יחוז ויחמול עליו מלך מלכי המלכים רחמיו יסר בסדר גנבה בסדר ההולו לחזות בנועם אדוני לבקר בחלו יצא ימין יעמידו ונחל אדוני וישקעו שלו יצור חיים נשמתו ישים כבוד מוחדו אדוני ונחלתו וירבה אליו השלום והמשכבו ישלום גרתיב יבוא שלום ונוכל משכבדם הלך מלכו ובכל בני ישראל השבועים עמו בכלל רחמים יצליחו וכן ירסון ונאמר אמן